Hey, welcome back. On my way home, I'm driving Miss Mandy, and today we're talking more financial vocabulary words. Check out my last video where we talked in depth about assets and liabilities, Robert Kiyosaki's definition of these words, and how, in some ways, you can turn liabilities into money-making assets and raise that side of your balance sheet. Today, we're talking about the other part of the balance sheet, which is income and expenses. And we're all very familiar with these words in personal finance, right? Now I'm doing a little bit more in-depth analysis about business and how that works, and it's a lot more complicated, which I see why, because there's so many moving parts to a business. But when I know more, you will know more. Until then, we're talking just strictly personal finance, because I know about that and I have a lot to say about that topic. So let's all do this little exercise where we list our sources of income on one side of a piece of paper, and we list our sources of expense on the other side of the paper. You can pause the video, take 3 minutes and do that. Everything that you can think of. And when you come back, we're all going to have more items on that expense side than the income sources side. Now, the number that's actually coming in from your income is probably more than what is going out from the expenses, but the number of items on each side of the paper is going to be different. And if you're like me, there's a lot more expenses on that side of the paper than there are sources of income. In fact, I'm a full-time mom. I've got a full-time job. And my sources of income are my job, my working income, and my husband's working income. We both receive income from a company that hired us to do a job. There's nothing wrong with that. But people who are wealthy and people who know how to build wealth know how to create more line items on the income side than the expenses side. That is their worth. They know how to do that. And it is a much faster way to become wealthy than if you reduce the items on the expenses side. So there's your two ways of balancing your sheet, right? It's called a balance sheet. So you want to make sure that those items are either relatively even or that your items on the income side outweigh those on the expenses side. And we're living backwards as people of the middle and lower classes, right? We live backwards than businesses do. They're all about cash flow, and middle class and poor class are all about attainment and consumerism, because we want more. We feel like we deserve more because those people, we work hard, and we feel like the harder we work, the more we deserve, right? Well, that's a whole other video topic, but your two ways of balancing your sheet are to, one, reduce expenses, which is where I've spent a majority of my life. Ever since I got married, we had very little money, and I've worked to budget, and I've worked to reduce as many expenses as we can. And guess where it's gotten us? Not very far. Not very far into wealth building at all. Yes, we have a house now, but life has happened to us, right? We own a house, but it's in debt. We have kids now, which cost us more money. We have pets now, which cost us money. And yes, we could have cut some of those things, but there's something to be said about quality of life. When we were living in our little 2-bedroom apartment, it was cheap and it was a nice place to live, but it was underground and there wasn't enough space for the stuff we had, and we were miserably packed in. And I need sunshine to thrive in this world. So being underground really was not a great option for me. So yeah, there's something to be said for quality of life. And as you progress in life and you go through your seasons of life, your priorities are different. So yeah, at that point in time in our lives, the cheapest thing was the best thing for us. But as we grew into a family, the more expensive thing was the thing that gave us the better quality of life. And that became non-negotiable for us. And this is where my husband is way better at determining these things than I am. He is a much better judge of those quality of life indicators while still being reasonable. He and I together balance really well, because I'm, like, how do we cut? Where are we not being efficient because we're not using these expenses that are going out? And he, on the other hand, is like, how do we enjoy life? So even for him, it's not really about accumulation, it's about experience. And I think that's a valuable outlook to have. Super valuable, especially paired with somebody who doesn't know how to think that way. And like I said, that's where I have lived a lot of my life. It's the mentality I grew up with. Like, you had to cut because there wasn't enough. And that mentality really gets to you. It is ingrained in you. And you're in survival mode. And I was in survival mode even when we had enough money to get by. And until very recently, I've been in survival mode. And coming out of that mindset has felt like a breath of fresh air, because I've been able to instead focus on creating more income, focus on creating automated systems so that I can spend money without guilt. And that is very valuable. So I've gotten off topic a little bit, but if you're not reducing expenses, what are you doing? Well, there's another way to reduce expenses. There's make your expenses more efficient. So yeah, you could reduce the taxes that you're paying. I have other videos that talk about how you can do that. You can invest your money, and that I guess that is another expense. But if you invest your money, you're investing it into something that's going to create another income source, which is the other side of that coin. The side you want to be working on. So what are some of those sources of income? Well, there's a lot of them out there. I feel like, coming from somebody who doesn't have a lot of money for investments right now, it is really hard to break the barrier. Because every time you get a little bit of money, you feel like it needs to go towards something necessary. Like, we have a drainage problem in our backyard and we have a little bit of money for our business, and it'd be really tempting to use that money that we've saved to put as a down payment toward our business loan and purchase the drainage solution for our backyard. It would be really easy to do that. So every time you get a little bit, you feel like it goes out just as quickly. You find something to spend it on. Start thinking of things like this. Start creating an automated system where you have some money set aside to invest, because when you do that, when you get your money to invest, you buy an asset. It can be a big asset, can be a small asset. So a big asset would be a rental house. Large barrier to entry, right? You have to have that 20% down. And right now with real estate prices the way they are, that's a pretty big barrier to entry. I mean, you're not going to get even a sort of bum house in the area where I live for less than $100,000. So 20% is $20,000. I don't have $20,000 just sitting around ready to be invested somewhere. So how do I lower the barrier to entry? Well, I make a smaller asset. I could do some things like in my last video where I turned some of my liabilities into assets, rent out a room in your house, rent out your car, things like that. You could do that to create that initial $20,000 and build your way up. But you could also do other things. I mean, people do all sorts of things. Start businesses, start a YouTube channel. I mean, that could be a source of income. Yes, I'm not making any money off of this right now because I don't have enough experience with it. I don't have enough viewers, enough watch hours to make my channel worth monetizing. But it is a goal of mine, and that's why I'm building on it this year. And, the benefit is I get to share with you all the fun advice that I've learned over the years and that I'm still learning, and share with somebody who's maybe 2 steps behind me on how to get to where I am now. So another way you can do it is to start another small business. I mean, if you've got time on your hands, then you've got a lot more options. I think I said in the last video that, if you have kids and a spouse and a full-time job, you have a lot more demands on your time. You have a lot more demands on your money than if you were single, if you didn't have kids, that kind of thing. So assess where your situation is and maybe start your own side hustle, or, build up a little bit of money up front and invest in somebody else's business that you think will succeed. Now you do have to be careful with investments because you can lose your money that way, right? It's a risk you take when you invest. I mean, for all I care, you can buy a candy machine and set it at the local grocery store if they'll let you, and maintain that, and that could be a source of income. I've seen people do it before. But yeah, the main idea of this video is, in your balance sheet, things should balance. And a lot of times in the lower middle classes, we have the idea that our job should be our sole source of income, and the mentality that I don't have time to create other sources of income because of the amount of time I spend at my job. But the thing is, once you start to build up those assets, once you start to create more sources of income, that's when your time becomes freer. Instead of working a 40-hour-a-week job, I could go down to a part-time job if I had enough assets to cover the expenses, for that extra $20,000 a year. I am just spitballing here because I didn't really have lots planned today, so I hope that helped a few people out there. If it did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. That really helps the channel. And if you would like to hear more, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notified of future videos. And until the next time, I'll see you then. Bye.